Hi! So, last time I made a video on the 5 things that I stole from Baldur's Gate, and it was my most successful video by far. I mean, 100 times more popular than my average upload, which is good, but it also brought a lot more eyes onto what I was saying and what I was creating, and a lot of people disagreed with some of the things that I said. And that's okay. And honestly, a lot of the feedback was great. People came forward and they said, hey, you said this, this, and this, but honestly, I don't know if that's a great implementation. And I said, yeah, I think you're right, actually. On second thought, and after you told me what you thought, I agree with you. But I do want to address some of the other comments as well. It's important to understand that D&D is a dynamic hobby. That means that it's not unchanging. It is forever evolving. But in fact, we are on the 5th edition or iteration of Dungeons & Dragons specifically, and it came off of Chainmail, which was based off of War Games, which was based off of other things in the past. It's constantly evolving and changing. And it's the flexibility of D&D that makes it so popular and so interesting and so dynamic. It's the reason that people want to continue playing and buy new editions and buy new books. Some people don't like that it's evolving and becoming more popular. One individual, I'll put their comment on the screen right now. They essentially said that if they're better at math, they should be better at D&D. And the new D&D is just helping people with mid-minds get into the game. So if you're a fellow mid-mind person like me, then please, you're going to want to keep watching this video. But this is a mid-mind video only.
You have a smooth brain. No ridges or lumps or valleys or bumps. All ideas slide right off, like a water slide.
Before we get into the 5 more things that I stole from Baldur's Gate, or I plan on stealing from Baldur's Gate, I want to say that I always try to give a charitable reading of all of my comments, and I ask the same in return. If you hear me say something that sounds stupid, perhaps I just didn't think of something for a moment. But that being said, if you are volatile and hateful, this isn't really a place for you. That's not the type of discussion that I warrant. And I guess just to be very clear, you might very well be much smarter than me. I don't claim to be an authority on Dungeons & Dragons. I've not been in the hobby for an extremely long time. I am a communicator and I am a learner, and I do both of those things. I love to learn and I love to talk about the things that I'm learning because it helps me learn more. If you're looking for an authority on D&D, I'm sure that there are other channels out there that would better suit you. But if you're interested in learning, collaborating, and experimenting with D&D, what can we do with this game, this box, and what can we twist in it to make it fit our tables better? Then you might be interested in what's to come. So go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Here are 5 more things that I'm interested in experimenting with from Baldur's Gate. Number 1, and this was universally recommended throughout the last video, was bonus actions for potions. Now, I've been implementing this for years because I started playing after Critical Role started playing, and that's what I saw them do, so I was like, yeah, I like that rule. But essentially a lot of people said, yeah, after seeing it in Baldur's Gate, I would also do that, where essentially it's a bonus action if you feed yourself a potion, and it's an action if you feed somebody else a potion. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Another thing that I'm interested in experimenting with, which I know many of the community members are going to say is absolutely busted, but it's throwing a potion. I see you, I hear you, I understand, yeah, like giving everybody the benefits of invisibility if you throw it onto the ground around you. Maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe I wouldn't do it with certain potions, such as like invisibility potion or a potion of giant strength or something like that. But perhaps I would allow it for health potions. It's like, yeah, there's only one healing word carrier in the group. They don't have any more spell slots. Somebody can chuck a health potion over at their friend and get them back up into the fight. I definitely think that would be interesting. The next thing is the short rests. And this is something I'm still working out in my head. But essentially, the way that short rests work in D&D currently is if you take a short rest, you must take an hour and then you roll hit dice. Your hit dice are an accumulation of your level, and the die type is based on your character type. So whether you're a ranger, a fighter, a wizard, etc. And I feel like my group tends to not take short rests very often, and I think part of this is because an hour is a long time in-game. However, I think that implementing it, hey, it's 5 minutes, but you only get 2 short rests per day. There's a limitation there, there's a buff there. I'm not sure. I think that I would prefer it, and I don't think it would change our game an incredible amount. The part that might be a little bit more controversial is I like the idea of you healing half your max HP rather than your hit dice. Again, our table tends to be less tactical maybe than other tables. So I like the game moving fast and quick and just flowing from one scene to the next scene. We're not typically crawling through dungeons, and I don't think most tables are crawling through dungeons. And so with that, you want to keep the game moving at a good pace. You're not trying to camp out in, like, I don't know, a corner of a dungeon, locking a door. That can be a lot of good tension, right? However, it's at the same time, it can be a tension killer, depending on how your table kind of goes through these types of motions. So being 5 minutes and restoring half your hit points, there's really no rolling required. You can guesstimate it fairly accurate. Next, and again, this was one that was less disputed, is shareable initiative. Now, some people were talking about how all the players go together and then all the villains go together. And I actually experimented with this last night in my game, and I don't think it's a good idea. When you do that big block type, what is tending to happen is the players are typically waiting for their turn, right? I mean, if you're really interested in the game, you're focusing on every single move that's happening, but most people are planning what they're going to do. And so if you have all of the villains going, which last night I had like 4 unique villains in a fight, or 5 unique villains going at the same time, I'm going as fast as I can, but each one of those is at least going to take 90 seconds to take their turn fully by the time I choose an attack, roll a die, move, all that stuff. So that turns into like 7 or 8 minutes of just my turn. And then everybody's deciding when to go on their turns. And by that point, people may have lost interest, as it could be 10 to 15 minutes before their turn comes back around. So I don't know if I agree with lump initiatives, but I do think that it makes sense if 2 party members are together. So like, let's say it's party member, villain, party member, villain. 2 of those party members can interchangeably take their turns. So one could do a bonus action, one could do an action, one could do an action. Like they could go back and forth. They could take their movement or whatever. It might be confusing to keep track of their action economy, but I think at the same time, if it's only 2, I think that there's really not a problem there. And again, everybody's trying their best to be fair and right at the table. But anyways, that's that. The last one I want to talk about, and this was suggested by several dozen people within the last comments of the last video, and that is that certain spell effects or physical effects affect the encounter. So for instance, the grease fire combo. Everybody is loving that, and I think that it's a really great combination myself. Or for instance, throwing down a water jug and then doing like Ray of Frost on it, freezing it, making it difficult terrain. I think that's really smart. It's those types of interactions that are not necessarily codified in the D&D 5e rule set, but I think that I've been implementing for a long time myself, and I'm always trying to say, if my players are being creative, I want to allow that and reward that instead of punishing that or simply denying it. So, for instance, if I have 2 players and one of them throws a gallon of water, like let's say they have no action economy on their turn. They are at a distance. They are an up-close fighter. They have nothing that is allowing them to move forward. It's not fun to let them feel like their action is wasted, right? But perhaps they plan with another player, hey, I have a jar of water on me. I'm going to throw it at the bad guy. You cast Ray of Frost, and we're going to freeze him. I'm not going to say that, yeah, that enemy's stunned and all hits are critical from now on, but I'll say, yeah, for the next round, that enemy's movement is halved, and perhaps the next attack on it has advantage or something like that. I don't think that that's a bad or crazy thing at all. I think that's really cool that they're thinking as you would if you were a character in that setting. You're thinking, I have to be resourceful. I am at a bad point and I need to desperately fix this. I like that idea a lot. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments. I'm genuinely curious. Again, please keep all comments respectful. One person, they were ISG 2015, talked about how actually it probably is worse having shove as a bonus action than an attack, because there are lots of other things that fighters, for instance, can do with their bonus actions, and they have a surplus of attacks, meaning shove would actually be better as one of their attacks. And Sure, that makes sense to me. I think I could see it either way. It depends on how the table plays, and this isn't a change that I would force onto anybody. It's something that I would definitely experiment with, and I would ask a fighter or a barbarian or a martial character at the table, and I would go, hey, what do you think about this change? Do you think this would benefit you or hurt you? And after their comment, I kind of agree with them. I think that they're right. I also want to highlight a really great commenter, Manny Brum, and they talked about several things from my video that actually would make a game of D&D much harder or more difficult to play. They talk about how adding too many items and scrolls and perks boost players' offensive capabilities, but actually don't help their defensive capabilities, making fights more unbalanced. So you might throw harder and harder hitting enemies at your players, and while they might be able to burn through their HP faster, they can't necessarily deal with the attacks as well. And I completely agree. That's actually something that I've had a problem with in my games as well. Additionally, they said if you add all of these tactical changes to D&D, you can tend to have a game that lasts from, they cite a story where they were started at 6 p.m. and it went all the way until 7 a.m. the next day. And that's not necessarily an enjoyable experience for everybody. And I personally agree with that sentiment as well. I like things feeling a little bit crunchy, but I will admit I'm not a tactician player, and neither is my table. We like to play. We are more casual players. We're there for fun, for story, for enjoyment, for RP, and for combat, certainly, but an 11-hour combat session would not go over well. And this individual also talks about how some of the changes that were implemented into Baldur's Gate were simply put in there because the game couldn't implement some systems from D&D very well mechanically in the engine. Like, for instance, a cover system really was too difficult for Baldur's Gate to implement, so they did things with like elevation and certain verticality and moving systems like that. And I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. They have a really long comment. I totally recommend that you go read it and check out my last video if you haven't. There's a lot of really good discussion happening in the comments. I respect the logos, the logic, right? I respect people who are extremely focused on the game's rules and are interested in manipulating the rules in such a way where you are getting every ounce of energy you can from staying within the confines of what has been created. And if that's how you want to play, fantastic. You should not watch my videos. I'm gonna say that again. But if you're interested in trying to adapt both, right? Balancing the logos and the pathos, the logic and the feel at the same time, then perhaps stick around. I think that I do try to take a more balanced approach. I'm not all rule of cool and allow the players to do whatever they want. I do think that some structure actually makes the game more engaging and fun. But I also believe that the people who made this game were imperfect, and they had deadlines, and they didn't think of everything. And sure, so they're definitely smarter than me when it comes to building D&D, but that doesn't mean I have nothing to offer as well. And it doesn't mean you don't have anything to offer additionally. I think that your ideas and my ideas and us experimenting together is going to make this game way more fun and last a lot longer and bring a lot more joy altogether. So with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then please leave a like, hit subscribe. I put out new D&D videos on the reg. Thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Good luck out there, adventurer.